Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Betting with Bearman podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm pleased to be joined by Scott Seidenberg, sports betting host. He's on VSiN Live. I've done a lot of programs with him. Also has a podcast on the same Bleav podcast network. I was on his show earlier this year. He's now on my show. Scott, welcome to Betting with Bearman. How are you?
Oh, it's a pleasure. I read it when it's posted every time I get the email newsletter, and I love everything that you do, David. You know that, so I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate it. It was good. I was thinking this week we got NBA and NHL and got some golf as well. And I'm like, who do I want on? I'm like, you know what? I haven't had Scott on, so let's bring Scott on. Last week was crazy because we had the derbies. We had a derby special guest and all that fun stuff. So before we get into the NBA and NHL, I just wanted to give you the platform, someone that was near and dear to both of us in the baseball world. John Sterling passed yesterday, as you saw, the Yankees long-time play-by-play guy and the voice of the Yankees. I know he meant a lot to your career. Meant a lot to my career. I wanted to give you the platform, get your thoughts on the passing of John Sterling.
Yeah, it's wild when for those of us who have the fortunate opportunity to work in this business, right? When I'm talking about sports media, whether it's radio, TV, covering, from a journalistic point of view, as a diehard Yankee fan growing up in New York and then having the opportunity to work in New York sports radio for the first 10 plus years of my career, you meet people that you didn't think that you would ever get to meet in your life. And whether that's athletes, announcers, and yes, of course, the incomparable John Sterling being one of them. My interactions with him have been nothing short of incredible. And everything that you heard that came out yesterday, all the sentiments that were pouring all over social media, the tributes, it really is just a fraction of the life and the legacy of John Sterling. Everything is true. What you've heard about how nice he was, how he lived by the beat of his own drum, how he was not very technologically savvy, carried around his flip phone, a Rolodex in his pocket of people's numbers because he didn't save anybody's numbers in the phone. So when you would call him, he didn't know who was calling. So you'd have to quickly identify yourself. Like, hi, this is Scott calling from ESPN. I'd love to get you on the radio, all that stuff. And the one thing that I loved about John, calling John, is that his voicemail was exactly what he was, like his voice. And so as properly as he spoke on the radio, that's how his voice was. Hello, you've reached John Sterling. It was like so formal, but he really was incredible. And I tweeted something out, when the news broke that there are enough words. There are not enough words to describe his life, his legacy, but for all of us Yankee fans, for all of us sports fans, everyone that grew up listening to him. I mean, this is a guy whose voice serenaded me to sleep when I was younger and used to have the radio by my bed like everyone did listening to Yankee games, especially on the West Coast. His voice is just going to live on forever. You're going to remember the nicknames, whether you thought they were cheesy or corny or you loved them. You're going to remember every single nickname. You're going to remember the ball game over, Yankees win, the Yankees win. You'll remember that forever. So I thought it was really great to see and hear all the tributes around Major League Baseball yesterday, around the sports world. The Yankees are going to have a special commemorative patch on their jerseys for the remainder of the season. So you love to see that. And really, he will definitely be missed. Baseball games, with all due respect to the guys who have taken over for him on WFAN, Yankee games just haven't been the same without Ma and Pa, as they are called, Susan and John. And Susan's still going, and we love her, but this just hasn't been the same without John.
And well said, yours coming from definitely a personal angle, having grown up listening to him. And whether those have listened to this podcast before or not, I got my start in Major League Baseball, press boxes. I was looking to become a play-by-play guy, and I was an assistant with the Marlins play-by-play guy, booth from 1996 to 98, and then back in 2002 with their PR team. And, in 97, when the Marlins made their first World Series run, the Yankees came to town. And as an aspiring college kid who wanted to be a broadcaster, every single week when a team came to town, even though I was just a 19-year-old intern in the booth, I'd always make it a point to go to the visiting radio or visiting TV booth and introduce myself. That's what I did. That's how I got the gig to begin with. I was up there and, I didn't have LinkedIn and social media. So I would just literally go and introduce myself as a 19-year-old kid. And that included when the Yankees came to town. And at the time, with the Marlins only being in their fifth season, that was the biggest series in Marlins history, with the Yankees coming to town for the first time. It was the first year of interleague play. They came in, and, as someone who wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster in baseball, he was at the top of my list. And I went over to the booth when the Yankees were there, and he didn't have to give me any attention. I was 19 going on 12. That's what I looked, and he couldn't have been nicer. Him, Bob Uecker, John Miller, the list goes on and on and on of all the great broadcasters in Major League history. Vince Scully, another one that I met over that time when they were on air, introducing myself to them. And again, they don't have to take their time, but they did. They did. And again, in 2002, I met him as well. And then you fast forward to me moving up to Connecticut and living here in Bristol and working for ESPN, many, many trips down to Yankee Stadium to see the Yankees, and have a buddy who works for them and had access up there. And every time I'd walk in and say hello, and he had no idea who I was. Years later, that's John. He didn't remember who I was, but didn't matter. He pretended with the best of them. Having listened to him I worked a lot of nights and evenings at ESPN in the early days, and somebody would always have the Yankee game on the radio somewhere in Bristol. And it was always a pleasure to listen to him and Susan, whether you thought they were good or not, or whether you thought they were corny or not. It was always John was great. It was like a NASCAR car with the press box, because everything was sponsored, and he rolled with the best of them. The Lowe's press box, the Rolex first pitch presented by my play-by-play assistant, and Carlos Silva in the background. It was fantastic to listen to him, and may he rest in peace. And I look forward to all the tributes that continue to come in.
Yeah, just you can still hear his voice. It's like, brought to you by Jeep. Like everything that it's the Lowe's broadcast booth. Let's build something together.
He rolled with it every time. He was a pro's pro. You can still hear it, and it caught a lot of us by surprise, because we didn't know what was going on with him, and all of a sudden he died. So
and you know what? I know that sometimes, like, you get like the Mushnicks of the world that would write ma and pa in the articles and criticize, but that was a term of endearment, because it felt like you were listening. It felt like they were everybody's grandma and grandpa, like broadcasting a game, listening to John and Susan. And, I thought the best sentiment was the Yankees tweeted out, John's famous line is Susan would do the pregame introduction, and then she would say, stepping up to the plate is whoever the leadoff batter is. She'd say, stepping up to the plate is X, and stepping up to the mic, the voice of the New York Yankees, John Sterling. And he'd go, well, Susan, I thank you. And that was the start of every single broadcast. And so the Yankees just tweeted out, well, John, we thank you. And that's the bottom line.
And loved hearing Michael Kay call the Aaron Judge home run yesterday as if he was Sterling. So it was classic, and those tributes continue to come in. Wonderful thing to hear from everybody. And I knew it was personal to you, so I wanted to give you the chance. So now we're here on the Betting with Bearman podcast, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Speaking of New York, we're going to stay with New York. We've got the NBA playoffs. The New York Knicks look like the unstoppable force who win every game by 30 to 40 points. Might as well just cancel the playoff, hand the trophy to the Knicks. It's over. It's done with. At least if you're in my group chats, and my group chat, Scott, are South Florida kids who grew up with New York parents, and they're all Knicks fans when the Knicks are good, and they don't pay attention to the NBA when the Knicks are bad. So the Knicks -7.5 was the line this morning versus the Philadelphia 76ers at FanDuel Sportsbook. Updated news. This broke just before the podcast started. Joel Embiid out for game 2. I'd list his injuries, but there's too many to count. He won't be playing. The line has moved to 10.5. It's a 3-point swing without Joel Embiid. Does it mean anything to you, Scott, this line change? Does it change anything in your mind, or did you think the Knicks were going to win regardless?
I thought the fact that the line did not change from game number 1 was the most telling thing. And now we did have a little bit of a zigzag baked in on the open. So the Knicks were 7.5-point favorites in game number 1. They obviously win by margin, which is what they've done this entire playoffs. The Knicks are the number 1 net rating team in these NBA playoffs. They're number 2 in offensive rating, number 2 in defensive rating, and they just set historic all-time records with consecutive wins by 25-plus points. The margin of victories was the largest margin of victory in a 3-game span that we've seen in the NBA playoffs history. So that's how well the Knicks have played. The fact that the 7.5-point spread for game number 1 opened at 6.5 for game number 2, giving the zigzag in favor of the 76ers, kind of made sense, but didn't really make sense. When the sharps hit the market, which is what they do early, and pushed it back up to 7.5, okay, now I'm on board. It's the same exact line as it was in game one. But I'll make the argument, Bearman, that it should have been more. Given the Knicks' performance and given the Sixers' performance, even with Joel Embiid, this line probably should have gone up from 7.5 to 8.5. So if I'm personally making the line 8.5, and now I have Joel Embiid missing the game, the 2-point adjustment's not enough. I don't think it's enough. Knicks 10.5 might still be a play for me. My one hesitation would be is that we see this time and time again, the fallen hero syndrome, right? A player goes out, and the rest of the team picks up the slack for that one game, right? Or that one moment. And then the next game is usually the letdown spot. We saw it with the Minnesota Timberwolves the minute Anthony Edwards goes down, right? They have that incredible second half, and then what happens the next game? They go to Denver and they get blown out. So this might be that game for the 76ers where they switch things up. Tyrese Maxey takes over. VJ Edgecombe scores 30 points, and they upset the New York Knicks. But the way that the Knicks have been playing, I just don't see that happening. This might look more like the Celtics without Tatum as opposed to the Timberwolves without Anthony Edwards.
Does it matter to you at all? And I'm only theorizing here with the opening line being 6.5, that the 76ers have done this before where they went out to Boston and got their butts kicked by 30 points and then won the next game. Then it happened in Philly. They went home and lost by 30 points. Then they won the next game. Does that factor into the line opening where it is? Because recency bias would tell you, well, they just lost by 1 million. How is it going to open lower? But at the same time, every time you count Philadelphia out, they're terrible, they're lost by 30, they can't play, blah, 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 blah. They come out and they win the next one. Does that factor into the line at all?
I think that it's just the zigzag that is completely built in, because we have seen that, and it's died kind of recently, but the teams that have not covered the spread have bounced back to cover the spread in the next game. It has been a tried and true system going back years that, the team that didn't cover the spread in the previous game will go on to cover the spread in the next game. Now, it's slowed down a bit here in these playoffs. In the first round, it was really strong. You mentioned it, the 76ers. We've seen a lot of teams. Just look at that series between the Cavs and the Toronto Raptors, where the home team won every single game. We've seen the zigzag come through, and I just think that's the natural course of action when the books open these lines, is to gravitate towards the team that lost that previous game, because historically that's how the books have been beat. And so they are trying to protect themselves by opening up the lines that way. Most famously, the zigzag, as it's referred to in the NBA, had been the strongest way to take advantage of the books, which is where a team loses games 1 and 2 on the road and then returns home in game 3. Betting that team in the first quarter and the first half used to be the most profitable thing you can do. And what we have seen over the last 2 years or so, with widespread legalization of sports betting and more content out there than ever, is that the books have been getting beat so much, and the information's all public now, that they've adjusted, where in game number 3, a team might be 5.5 point favorites for the game, and then they're 4.5 point favorites in the first half, which is that doesn't make sense, but they're baking in that zigzag. And I just think the Sixers opening up at 6.5 as opposed to 7.5 is that natural zigzag baked in by the sports books. And the bettor has quickly told you, nope, that's wrong. And that's why it immediately went back to 7.5.
And I did look at that, because that's the down 2-0 at home, getting points in the first half type scenario. I've been playing that for years, and the books have adjusted. I worked with Doug Kazarian on this theory for many, many years when we were at ESPN. I looked, Toronto, same thing. The spread was 4.5 for the game, 3.5 for the first half. First round, Oklahoma City, Phoenix, same thing. It was 10.5 for the game, 9.5 for the first half. The books definitely have adjusted to that, taking away our advantage, but there are advantages out there. Is there anything else you like in this game? Obviously, you said the 10.5 is not enough. The line, the total is 215.5. I've seen a bunch of people say they like the over, and that was before Joel Embiid was kind of out. Or anything in the prop market you like tonight?
I was on the over in game number 1. I'll probably still be on the over here tonight. I think that without Joel Embiid, you might get a little bit more pace from the 76ers. You know, Embiid tends to slow things down when he gets the basketball on the offensive side, right? He, whether they're running pick and rolls or whether he's kind of backing down, posting up an opponent, or standing there and then going to wind up shooting a three-pointer. I just think that we're going to see an increased pace here from the 76ers without Joel Embiid on the floor. So that might lend to an over here tonight.
Related but unrelated. You're not a 76ers fan. I'm not a 76ers fan. But if you were, you have this team that has underperformed for a decade in terms of this process they're doing. You saw in the last couple of games versus Boston what they're capable of. Joel Embiid is a huge part of the success of this franchise when they play good. But he cannot stay healthy to the point where he's missing the first 3 games of the first round. And that was an appendectomy. That was different than getting injured. He plays a couple of games. Now he's out for game 2, which is a pivotal game. At what point, if you're a 76ers fan, do you say, you know what, this is not a path they need to go hit players we can count on? Because they can be as good as anybody in the NBA, as we've seen. But if he's not taking the court, what do you got?
It's been a question for a long time. And when I thought the Sixers were going to get eliminated in this first round series against the Boston Celtics, I had a Philadelphia interview set up, like with a Sixers reporter. And my question was going to be, well, what's the future of Joel Embiid in Philadelphia? Is it time to move in another direction? And then, of course, they win that game, and we put the interview on pause, and then they go on to win the series, and it's a total different interview now that's going to happen. But that is a major question with the city of Philadelphia. There's no denying, when he's healthy, Joel Embiid's a top 4 player in the world, right? Like, we can argue about why he won that MVP, and that might have been other circumstances beyond what actually happened on the floor, but he truly is that special of a player. The problem is, as we always say, the best of ability is availability, and he just does not give that to you. And when you have younger players like a VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey that are leading the team and you want to develop, I think they might be better off going in a different direction. So I don't know if Joel Embiid will be in Philadelphia long term, and I don't know what his career is going to look like in a couple of years. And it's a shame because, as I mentioned, when healthy, he is that dynamic of a player. Going back to that pace conversation, I just looked it up. In these playoffs, the Sixers are playing at the 4th slowest pace in the NBA playoffs at 94 possessions, 94, which is, how many possessions per 100 minutes. This season without Embiid, they're playing to a 97 pace. So the pace does pick up without Joel Embiid on the floor. So another reason why I like the over tonight.
And the only prop that I'm playing and betting with Bearman, other people see this. I do it every single game. I said as long as the Karl Anthony Towns assist prop was at 3.5, I was going to take it.
Point Towns.
They moved it to 4.5, Scott, for the first time. However, it's plus 113. You're still giving me plus money. And this is not a situation where, like we had with De'Aaron Fox the other night, where his last assist came with 21 seconds to go to hit the prop that we had at over 5.5. Karl Anthony Towns has hit this in the first quarter. He's hit this in the first half. In game 7 versus Boston, he had it in the first 6 minutes of the game. In game 6 versus Atlanta, he had it in the first 6 minutes of the game. They moved it to 4.5, but it's plus 113. You do the math, that's around a 46% chance is what they're telling you, 47% implied probability. He's hit it in 67% of his games since April 1st. So I'm going to keep doing it. They're going to give me plus money on it. That's fine. It's not like he's getting 4. He's been getting 5 or more in almost every single game. And the 3 games of the last 18 since April 1, where he didn't get 5 or more assists, it came in the 3 games of the Atlanta series where this Knicks team was a complete mess. And after game 3, when they were down 2-1, they changed everything. And now he's rolling with 10 assists, 6 assists. So I'm still going to play the over 4.5 as long as they're giving me plus money.
Is there any hesitation to Joel Embiid being out and Towns being more of a scorer as opposed to more of a facilitator? Because it's easy. Well, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's more of it's easier to see, not to accomplish. Maybe it's easier to see when Joel Embiid's defending you as a team to strategize to pull him away from the basket. So Towns maybe getting the basketball further away and then dishing it to a cutting opponent behind Joel Embiid. But without Embiid, is it more post-ups for Karl Anthony Towns? Does he score more down low?
Now, obviously, I took the bet this morning, and I wrote the newsletter this morning, so it was before the news. But as you look at and analyze Joel Embiid, when I first made the bet in Game 1 on Monday, my initial hesitation, because it was juiced to minus 150, 160, it's still at 3.5, was, will Joel Embiid being in there cause Cat to get into foul trouble, not play enough, because it's, it can get rough and tumble down there underneath the post, get into foul trouble and not play enough to get the assist. No worries, he hit it in the second quarter. We were fine. And then, of course, it was a blowout. He still had 6 assists in only 20 minutes, by the way. So you can look at it both ways. I already bet it. I don't know if the number will come down. Maybe they'll go back down to 3.5. You could hit again. But yes, Joel Embiid out for the game. The line's now 10.5 in favor of the Knicks.
Less support through telehealth, but it feels overwhelming and rushed? Check out OrderlyMeds.com now. OrderlyMeds.com was built to be different. Here, you connect with real doctors who take the time to understand your goals, review your eligibility, and guide you through a plan that's right for you. Orderly Meds provides access to proven GLP-1 medications like semaglutide and tirzepatide, including both name brand options and personalized compound versions when appropriate. So you have choices backed by clinical oversight, not guesswork. It's a simpler, more supportive telehealth experience designed around people who want clarity, care, and confidence in their weight loss journey. And your medication is delivered directly to your home in discreet packaging, so your experience stays private from start to finish. Do your research, ask the right questions, then visit orderlymeds.com/podcast for an exclusive offer. Again, that's orderlymeds.com/podcast. Individual results may vary, not medical advice. Eligibility required. See site for details.
215.5. You still like the over. That's the Eastern Conference Game 2. Now we'll go to the Western Conference, where I'm not sure anybody saw this coming. One, because I don't think they knew Anthony Edwards was going to play until the afternoon on Monday. Timberwolves take Game 1. Spurs are a 9.5-point favorite in Game 2. What was a bigger surprise to you, that Edwards played or that they won and upset San Antonio?
Maybe that Victor Wembanyama had 10 double-digit blocks in that game. Like, hey, Minnesota, stop driving on Wembanyama, okay? I think that, watching Minnesota win that game was very impressive, despite the fact that San Antonio played well down the stretch and had a wide-open look. I mean, you're going to get Champagny with a three, a pump fake, wide-open three. You're going to take that. I know people were criticizing Mitch Johnson for not calling a timeout there. They got an open look. You're not going to get a better look like that if you're running a set play. You're just not. So I would take that shot every single time, especially from one of your best three-point shooters. I think that this just sets up perfectly for a bounce-back spot here for the San Antonio Spurs, specifically in the first quarter. Now, this is something that I've been tracking throughout the NBA playoffs. We talk about the zigzag, right? When a team loses, the other team covers the spread. But the first quarter is really where we isolate the advantage. In these playoffs, the previous ATS loser in the next game's first quarter is 24-15-1 against the spread in that first quarter. When those teams are favored 14-7-1 against the spread, like the San Antonio Spurs are favored here. And then I looked at just going back to 2021, since, post-COVID, and I wanted to see, if the home favorite lost in Game 1, how do they bounce back in game number 2? Well, in the full game, 16-6 straight up, 15-7 against the spread. So yes, they bounce back. In the first quarter, 19-3 straight up, 14-8 against the spread. Spurs first quarter was the best bet that I gave out. I played it at 3.5. It might be 2.5 at some books by the time you're listening to this. I'd go up to 3.5, and that's about it. If you want to lay north of minus 200 and just go Spurs money line in the first quarter, I'm never going to be against that. I hate, by the way, Dave, when people say, "Oh, like it's too expensive of a price. Let me parlay it with something." Stop. No one's telling you can't lay juice. If you think you have an edge based on how many times it's going to hit versus the price of the game, you lay whatever you want to lay. If the implied probability of a minus 200 is less than what your implied probability of the game hitting or the line hitting is, then just bet the minus 200. So it's something that I might look to do, but certainly if the 2.5s are available out there with any money coming in on the Timberwolves here, I'd go Spurs in the first quarter as the biggest edge that I see in this game.
And I totally agree with you about the juice thing. None of us want to lay that juice, but it was my theory with Karl Anthony Towns in game one. The juice was minus 160, but the guy had hit 4 or more assists in about 19 of 20 games. It was in my favor, so I went ahead and laid it. In terms of the Spurs first quarter, give those numbers again for the listeners in case they didn't get it the first time.
So when home favorites lose game number 1 of a series, in game number 2 since the 2021 playoffs, they bounce back to go 19-3 straight up and 14-8 against the spread in the first quarter in those game number 2s. In these playoffs, in all games in the playoffs, the previous ATS loser, so in this case, it is the San Antonio Spurs. Not only did they not cover the game, but they lost the game outright, which, by the way, in these playoffs, it's very rare that the underdog loses but covers the spread. So it's almost like saying the loser of the game. It's only happened 5 times in these playoffs where the dog has covered and still lost. So the previous ATS loser bounces back in the next game to go 24-15-1 against the spread in the first quarter. But when those teams are favored, like the Spurs are the favorite tonight, 14-7-1 against the spread in the first quarter. The one that lost for me most recently was the Celtics first quarter in game number 7, because I had no idea what Joe Mazzulla was doing starting Shireman and Garza, and if I knew about that starting lineup, that was immediately cancel your bet right away. But other times it has come through here, so I'm banking on the Spurs to start off fast here in the first quarter tonight.
I'm glad you brought up the first quarter, because when I was writing the newsletter this morning, I looked into losing game 1 at home, what it looks like in game 2, and the numbers were okay. In fact, you just said them, like 14-8 or whatever, and they weren't good enough for me to put in the newsletter. First quarter, 14-3, that's a whole different story. Anything else in this game, prop-wise or side total-wise, that you were playing?
Does it worry you that Victor Wembanyama had double-digit blocks in his last game, but his line for tonight is only at 4.5? Does that concern you?
It doesn't concern me, and if I had to play it, I would play the over, but he had 12, but he had 4 in one possession as well. And you could argue 1 or 2 of them were goaltending or a foul as well. They're going to make it a little tighter now that the coach on the other side complained about the goaltendings? Maybe. I'm not chasing that, because 12, no matter what statistical database you look at, 12 is an anomaly. You almost throw it out. Minnesota's going to have to learn, all right, we're going to win. We're not going to go at Victor Wembanyama. So I don't expect anywhere near the 12. Do I lean over 4.5? Probably. It's hard to bet the under in that situation, but if you're looking to fade something, that wouldn't be the world's worst bet.
So the bet that I did in game number 1, I'm going to go back to the well and do it here in game number 2, and that's Julius Randle over 1.5 3-pointers. I like to do this a lot with teams playing against the San Antonio Spurs because of everything that you mentioned. Why are you going after with Victor Wembanyama? He just had 12 blocks in the last game. Why are you going to go drive and try and get over the big man? And I think we see teams rely more on the 3-point shot to avoid Victor Wembanyama. In game number 1, Julius Randle was 2 of 6 from 3-point range. Now, yes, he went over the 1.5, so great. We cashed a little plus money prop here on the 2 that he made, but the fact that he shot it 6 times, that's all I need to see. In fact, when I look at, when I'm doing these props, especially for a 3-point prop, I just want volume, okay? I don't care that, the hit rate's not great because he didn't go over 1.5 in 4 straight games. Well, you know something? If he took 10 3-pointers in all 4 of those games, I'm betting it in game number 5. As long as the volume is there for me, that's more important than the hit rates, because keep shooting them. They're going to fall. Keep shooting them. The fact that Randle shot 6 3-pointers in game number 1, and I think there's more of an emphasis to avoid going in on Wembanyama here in game number 2, I'll gladly take a plus 140 shot at Randle over 1.5 made threes once again here in game number 2.
And most of the time, that's what you guys like you and I look at. We look beyond the box, or we look at assist chances, rebound chances, field goal attempts, 3-point attempts. It's why I took James Harden in game 7 with Cleveland. I took over 2.5 3-pointers because he had 10 or more 3-point attempts in 5 straight games. And this game, he decides he went into overtime. He still only went 1 for 4 from 3-point land. You're going to lose some of them. If we won them all, we wouldn't be doing a podcast. We'd be sitting on a beach somewhere drinking Mai Tais. So That is tonight's game. You're listening to the Betting with Bearman podcast presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. He's Scott Seidenberg. I'm David Bearman. Betting with Bearman podcast, BearmanBets.com newsletter. That is tonight's game twos. Let's look at tomorrow. We got the Cavs and Pistons. Pistons won game one, except for a 5-0 spurt. The Cavs took the lead. Pistons rolled the rest of the game, winning by 10. 3.5-point favorite, 215.5. It's 1 point less than it was in game one. Zigzag theory or something else, Scott?
I think it's, zigzag, but also are the Cavs going to turn the ball over as much as they did in game number one? Because that was the difference in the game. If you looked at the turnovers in that game last night, first off, just embarrassing numbers. And James Harden, once again, with 7 more turnovers. Dude, stop giving the ball to the other team. Just stop. It's just embarrassing at this point. They had 20 turnovers last night that led to 31 points for the Pistons. Think about that. The game was a 10-point game, obviously, but 31 points off of turnovers. I don't think that plays itself out again. Yes, I know the Cavs haven't won a game on the road in these playoffs, but I don't think they're going to allow 31 points off of turnovers. If they allow 15 points over turnovers, guess what? If they did that last night, they would have won the game. So I do think we get a bounce back here from Cleveland just because I feel they limit the turnovers, which was the biggest problem for them in last night's game.
Now, people were poo-pooing the Pistons before the playoffs started. They won 60 games. They're a regular season team. They're not going to go far. Then they decided to tease us with being down 3-1 to the 8th-seeded Magic, who aren't a very good team. And then it's all right, how did this team win 60 games? Then they win their last 3 games, and then they beat Cleveland. So they've won 4 straight games in a row. Across the board, the offensive numbers improved. They couldn't get much worse. They were 15th or 16th among the 16 teams in every offensive category after the first 4 games, and they've improved it. Are you buying the Pistons, or are you still saying this is still the team that was down 3-1 to Orlando?
They are the team that won the most games to get the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They were never the best team in the Eastern Conference, and they are not the best team in the Eastern Conference that's still playing here in these NBA playoffs. So I am not going to be betting on the Pistons. I do not have faith in the Pistons moving forward. I still think that they lose this series against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and if they were to advance, I'd have them losing to either the Knicks or the 76ers. So no, I am not a believer in the Detroit Pistons. They beat up on some bad teams throughout the regular season, and they just won the most games. But as you have seen, and we have all seen, the NBA regular season is irrelevant. So you won 60 games. Congratulations. I don't care.
It's like the President's Cup in hockey, utterly irrelevant. And the Pistons shouldn't have gotten past the Magic. The Magic utterly blew Game 6 at home in an embarrassing fashion. Shouldn't even have to play Game 7 after that. So I'm with you. I think they can beat Cleveland. I don't have them beating Cleveland, but I think they can. But then I have them losing to the Knicks regardless of that. Now to the last series of the second round, a series that has plenty of star power. But if they canceled it tomorrow, I'd be okay because we know what the end result's going to be anyway. I was on VSiN last night with Tim and Matt, and they interrupted at one point during my golf picks to tell me that the Lakers have cut it to 3. And I'm like, come on, guys, this is literally a tease. Not only are the Lakers not going to win, but they're not going to cover either. And Tim was losing his mind. That being said, the Thunder are a 15.5-point favorite in game 2. Totals 209.5. I have zero interest in the game. I have zero interest in the series. If they just put the Thunder in the Western Conference Finals, we'd be fine with it. What do you think of this game, and what do you think of this series?
So in game number 1, I bet Lakers team total under 98.5 came through with them only scoring 90. The Lakers have played the slowest pace of anybody in these entire playoffs. That entire series with Houston was played at a snail's pace. And that's the strategy, right? When you are a 15-point dog, what do you want to do? You want to limit the possessions. You want to play as slow as possible. And so that's what the Lakers did last night. They continued to play slow, and they only scored 90 points. Because the total has adjusted, this is interesting. The total has adjusted. The spread hasn't adjusted. What do we see now? Lakers team total listed at 96.5, not 98.5. Boy, I still want to bet it. It just feels really low. But how is this game going to play out any differently than game 1? where the Lakers are probably going to lose, 110-92. It's just it really does feel like that type of game once again. And I'll probably, even though the number is suppressed, I'll probably go back to the well once again with the Lakers team total going under, this time at 96.5.
So that's the Lakers Thunder right now. The Thunder lead 1-0 in that series, another huge spread. You were looking at potentially Thunder's Spurs, which everybody expects, but the Timberwolves are right there with the Spurs winning game one. Do you still expect this to finish up being Spurs and Thunder in the Western Conference Finals?
I do. And obviously the market telling us that that's the case as well with the overwhelming series prices on both of these teams. I mean, you looked around the NBA at some point and you started to realize the separation of teams. And there was a time where it was, everyone was saying there's only 2 teams that can win the NBA title, or there's, 3 teams that can win the NBA title. Denver was actually considered as one of those teams, and we saw how pathetic they looked in the first round. The Spurs have been considered on the cusp there, right? It was OKC, Boston once Tatum returned, Denver, and the Spurs are young because they've never been here before. It's been 6 years or so since they've been to the playoffs. Wemby's first taste of the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. Watching them come back in that game against Portland, down 17 at the half, to not only win that game, but to blow out Portland and cover the original line for that game, that was the tipping point for me. Not the win without Wemby on the floor. That win was the one that sent me over the top thinking the San Antonio Spurs can win the NBA title. Because
I absolutely agree.
Because it's very easy to see, and veteran teams do this all the time in the NBA playoffs. You muck a game, right? You muck it. You just say, listen, we're down 17 at the half. Oh, we're down 25. Listen, it's a 7-game series. We're fine. We don't need this. We'll get it next game. We'll fold our hand, start bringing in the bench players, and let's move on. To see this young team actually have the inexperience help them, where they felt, listen, we're down 17. Game's not over. I don't care about a 7-game series. We're going to win this game. And to watch them go on that third quarter run and then eventually that fourth quarter run, I said it that night. I said, this is it. San Antonio Spurs are legit NBA title contenders. And I'd bet them now. They were like plus 400 at that point. I was like, bet them now. Bet them against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, the San Antonio Spurs are absolutely legit. And right now, I think it's obviously the Thunder and the Spurs as the top 2, NBA title candidates. And then I'd put the New York Knicks right there behind them at 3.
Yeah, and for those who haven't paid attention all season long, the Thunder have 18 losses, and 4 of them are to the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs took 4 out of 5 from the Thunder, and in 3 of those games, Wemby was coming in off the bench, having returned from an injury. So it's out there. The way the Spurs are playing, obviously they got to pass Minnesota first, but the way they're playing, they can absolutely win the NBA title. Scott's here talking NBA. We're going to change a little bit and pivot towards the NHL real quick on the Betting with Bearman podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a couple of games tonight, starting with the Montreal Canadiens and Buffalo Sabres, who many would have not picked to have been a second-round Eastern Conference semifinal series, considering how long it had been since Buffalo had won anything and Montreal had won anything. Scott has some numbers on this one right now. The Sabres are a minus 130 favorite at home versus Montreal. The total's at 5.5, but you like something to do with the puck line in this one.
Yeah, first off, Montreal, what a fun series this is going to be, Montreal and Buffalo, right? And also, Montreal has been competitive in every single game. I mean, every game in that Tampa Bay series was decided by 1 goal. We obviously had a couple of overtime games, but every single game decided by 1 goal. If you laid the juice, and it didn't matter if it was minus 220, minus 250, whatever it was, if you bet Montreal plus 1.5 goals in every single game, obviously you cashed, because they won 4 games, and the 3 games they lost were by 1 goal each. That's what I'm doing here tonight. It's minus 230 at the highest point that I see, but I'm still betting the Montreal Canadiens plus 1.5 goals. They keep games close. They're never out of any game, and they are very live to win this game as well. And then there's these numbers that I found with teams coming off of a Game 7. This is all-time history of the database going back to 2007. When you are coming off of a Game 7 victory in the Stanley Cup playoffs, playing against an opponent that is not coming off of a Game 7, these teams are 30-20 straight up, 29-21 on the puck line. The games are going over, by the way, 26, 19, and 5. That's 58% to the over. So actually people say, oh, well, the game 7 fatigue is going to hurt them in game number 1. No, it's the opposite. These teams are ready. They're primed. They just played the most important game of their lives. There's no letdown after that. History has shown us that these teams continue to play well in the game 1 of the following series. Now, I looked at isolating those teams going on the road after game number 7. The straight up numbers aren't as great, 17 and 15, and they're mostly dogs on the road in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but they're covering the 1.5 puck line 22 and 10. That's 68.8% covering the 1.5 puck line, and games going over 20, 11, and 1 to the over. So 64.5% to the over. It's Montreal plus a goal and a half. It's the over 5.5 tonight. Montreal wins the game 4-3.
Montreal 4-3 would get that. Montreal's played all of these low-scoring one-goal games, as opposed to the other side. And we saw the Wild and Avalanche play what looked like home run derby the other night. Fascinating game. I know the commentators in between each break were saying how bad of hockey it was. To me, I'm sitting there on the computer writing stuff, and it was goal. It was fascinating. It was great to watch.
I thought we were getting that last night, by the way, when there were 2 goals scored in less than a minute. And I'm thinking, here we go again. Like, this is buckle up. It's happening again.
And it was 3-1 after the first period, and it took until the very end before it hit the over 6.5 and 4-3 with the 7 total final in that one. What about the second game tonight? The Vegas Golden Knights, your Las Vegas Golden Knights versus the Anaheim Ducks. Vegas is minus 162. The Ducks are minus 188 on the puck line. Total 6.5. As we've seen, the Western Conference ones are always a tick up at 6.5. Mm-hmm. How good are your Vegas Knights?
They're really good. And they've been better ever since John Tortorella took over. Torts brings just a different attitude, a different, it's not so much the scheme, because when you take over with, 8 games left or so in the regular season, there's no time to install a different system. That's not why Torts was brought here to the Vegas Golden Knights. Torch was brought for a different attitude, for a different approach. Bruce Cassidy is a Stanley Cup winning head coach and was let go because they felt that he lost the dressing room, that the team was not as motivated under Bruce Cassidy. Well, John Torts comes in and, he's the type of guy that says, if you're not laying down and blocking shots, you're riding the bench, So I think we've seen a much better intensity from the Vegas Golden Knights on a per shift basis, plus the confidence that Torts gave in Carter Hart in net has been a real difference maker for this team, because that's something that they lacked all season long, was consistency in net. With all due respect to Aiden Hill and, Akira Schmid at times, Carter Hart has really brought some stability to the net there for the Golden Knights. I think Anaheim keeps this close. I wouldn't mind laying the juice on Anaheim plus a goal and a half. I think they're live to win this game outright. Before this series started, I looked at Anaheim and Utah, very similar teams. And I felt that this series could play out almost identical to the way that Vegas and Utah played out. Anaheim's a little bit more experienced, though, than Utah. Utah has all the talent, but they don't have a lot of guys that have been there, done that before, whereas Anaheim does. They do have a lot of guys with some, Stanley Cup playoff experience, most notably several Rangers that are now on the Anaheim Ducks. But this is a team that has a great mix of veteran presence and young talent. And I thought that the tired legs would catch up to Vegas at some point because of, the age on that roster. And maybe it has with some of their top line guys, but I've been impressed to see the secondary and the third line guys scoring for Vegas. It's Barbashev scoring. Mitch Marner finally had, a breakout performance here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's less about Mark Stone and Jack Eichel and Dorofeev, who had a monster series against Utah. And it's more about the other players, the Barbashevs, the Brett Howdens, and yes, Mitch Marner picking it up now, making his contract worth it. So that has been the most impressive part here to me for the Golden Knights. Game number 1 was the first game that these teams have played this season that has gone under the posted total. They played 3 games in the regular season. All 3 were 4-3 scores. I think we get a much higher scoring game tonight. I think Anaheim scores more goals tonight. So if you want to just isolate one side of it, I'd go with the Ducks team total to go over here tonight. And let's see, I Bleav we could get a 2.5 maybe on the team total for the Anaheim Ducks. Let's see, 2.5 minus 150 to the over up on FanDuel. That would be a play for me.
So here you have it. He has high, and by the way, you got to give credit to the Vegas GM for seeing it when he saw it. You're talking 75% of the way through the season, a team that had been near the top was fading fast. It's not just put a Band-Aid on. He ripped the entire thing off, put a tourniquet on, brought in a new head coach, and look what they've done since then. And with those historic franchises like Florida and Tampa out of the way, it opens the door, and I say that with total sarcasm, opens the door to have the Colorados, the Vegases, and Carolinas of the world getting a chance. And it's funny, Scott, I was at Petco yesterday, and anybody who has pets knows that when you go to Petco, you always walk in, meet interesting people at Petco. Guy behind me in line, I'm in Southington, Connecticut, had a Florida Panthers championship shirt on. I got all giddy. I'm like, hey, Florida Panthers, all right. And he looked at me and he goes, every year I buy the championship shirt for every single team every single year. And I'm like, you do you, but go Panthers. So that was
you're telling me he just keeps buying Florida Panthers shirts?
He bought a couple, but he has got full Lightning ones in there. He's like an Avalanche one. He's got a Vegas one in there. But I got all excited that I saw this guy literally in a Petco in Southington, Connecticut, because the last time I saw someone wearing Panthers gear, I was in Seattle, and I was at the Space Needle doing a tour, and the guy behind me had an Ed Jovanowski jersey on, and that got me excited. So anyhow, Scott.
I'm just happy. We joke, but I'm just happy to get the Florida teams out here, because I Bleav it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight years we've had a Florida team in the Stanley Cup.
6 straight years there was either Florida or Tampa was in the Stanley Cup final. Tampa did it. They won 2 in a row and lost the three-peat. And then Florida lost to Vegas and then won 2 in a row. So 6 straight years. So
6 straight years, Florida in the Stanley Cup final. Florida, where the ice melts.
It does. They did an experiment in the 80s before the Panthers got a team. They had the Rangers and Kings play an exhibition game at the old Miami Arena, the old Pink Elephant Arena. And it was Wayne Gretzky was there because it was Rangers Kings, and the game was stopped after 2 periods because the ice melted. So I turned to my dad and I said, we're never getting a professional hockey team in this city. And then they put 2 of them in Florida. And neither team was there at the time. So they put 2 of them there. Scott, pleasure as always. Where can people find you on the air, on socials? Where can people find your work?
Yep. The Better Day podcast is brought to you by the Bleav Podcast Network. You can catch that Monday through Friday mornings, wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple, Spotify, etc., YouTube as well. You can catch me on the weekends hosting on VSiN, Live Bet Saturday and Live Bet Sunday. And head to the website, bettorday.com, BETTORDAY, bettorday.com, daily newsletter, picks, tools, and resources. The type of information and analysis that you really can't find anywhere else. Well, you could if you searched multiple sites and took multiple minutes and hours of your day to do it. At bettorday.com, we put all those resources in one place at your fingertips. So feel free to give us a try and check out all the information that we have for you there. For tonight's games, I will let you know. I'll give a little insight for free here. Our NBA Game Center up on bettorday.com does give out projections. We have the New York Knicks projected tonight to win 113.3 to 102.7, and the San Antonio Spurs projected to win 116.1 to 101.6. So do with that information what you wish.
And absolutely go to get his newsletter at Better Day Newsletter. When I do my newsletter every day, it's not, we're not competing. We have 2 different types that we do, but mine has gotten significantly better ever since I got Scott's, because there's so much content in Scott's that I can take, trends and stuff that I can take when I write up my write-ups for my newsletter as well. It's a fascinating newsletter. You go to the site, you have the trend center and everything. You can't miss it. It's wonderful information. Scott, loved having you on the show. We're going to do it more often. I'm going to come on the Better Day podcast more often as well. Not after the Gators just lost in the NCAA tournament, and I was, planning my own funeral, and Scott says, hey, you want to come on tonight? So he got me in great form, as it was just hours after Florida was eliminated from their chance at winning back-to-back national titles. So you got me in good form that night.
That was not by design.
No, it was not. I had agreed to do it, and he shot me a text checking on me and say, you still want to do it? I'm like, well, I'm not going to sleep. Doing your podcast is better than going out and killing someone, so let's do it. He's Scott Seidenberg. I'm David Bearman. You've listened to the Betting with Bearman podcast. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hit subscribe, Leave a 5-star rating and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Enjoy the games tonight. Enjoy the games tomorrow. And, of course, enjoy the golf.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.